Thanks very much for having me.
Have you effectively replied to all BYU fans that responded to your article on Twitter?
I have not, nor have I replied to all of the Utah fans who jumped on to make fun of the BYU fans.
Good man. Good man. You have a better life because you didn't do that. So you wrote an article yesterday. Give us a brief synopsis of kind of the angle you took on BYU's role in scheduling with the Pac-12.
Well, I mean, basically, I set out to kind of get a handle on the Pac-12 non-conference schedules for the next 5 years or so, just to see how many, marquee intersectional games there were, how many games there were against FCS opponents, all that kind of thing. And it struck me as I was compiling the list that there were a lot of games against BYU. And I expected there to be a few, even over and above the Utah series. I expected there to be a few, but it was a little bit, the number was higher than I thought. It's 18 games over the next 5 seasons starting this fall, and that is basically 10% of the Pac-12's total non-conference games over the 5 years are against BYU. And, I mean, it certainly makes sense, on a real general level, the Pac-12 teams would want to schedule the Cougars, and it makes sense that the Cougars would want those games. I just didn't quite expect it was going to be that big a number. And if you think about it, that's pretty significant in terms of, the conference's overall postseason landscape, right? Because the non-conference games count a whole lot toward playoff access. And, it's going to behoove the Pac-12 immensely if BYU, over the sweep of those 5 years, is a good team, because that's going to resonate with the committee. Whereas if the Cougars are, from 2018 to 2022, if it's the same Cougars we saw last year, that's not going to serve the Pac-12 very well.
Jon Wilner of the San Jose Mercury News, AP Top 25 and Heisman voter, with us on BYU Sports Nation. If BYU has 18 games scheduled with the Pac-12 over the next 5 years, they're really not that far off of what Notre Dame does with the ACC. Do you think the league would ever want to form some type of formal scheduling agreement with BYU?
I wouldn't rule that out. I'm not sure that, the conference has been very hesitant to get heavily involved in scheduling, non-conference scheduling, either for football or men's basketball. They will advise. In fact, they have an advisory group, a formal advisory group on the men's basketball side to assist with scheduling philosophy. But they have been very reluctant to kind of take more of a hands-on role. So in that regard, I would be a little skeptical of some kind of formal agreement. At the same time, I could certainly see the conference, nudging teams to schedule BYU if that's even necessary. Though, I mean, it's an obvious game for everybody, really, given BYU's fan support throughout the footprint, given the modest travel cost for Pac-12 fans and teams, going into Provo. So, I mean, it just makes perfect sense. So I don't know that it's even necessary, really, for a formal agreement. I mean, 9 teams out of 12 have the Cougars scheduled over the next 5 years.
John, we joke that the county to the north where Utah is Pac-12 country, so we feel like we're almost there, right? Is it in the best interest of the Pac-12 teams that have scheduled BYU for the Cougars to be really good and potentially knock them off and be a loss, or to be just kind of mediocre or bad and be a win in the pursuit of the college football playoff?
No, I think that the Pac-12, best case scenario for the Pac-12 is the Cougars be really good, because that gives you the chance to win a non-conference game over a team that's 9-3, 10-2, and that's for getting in the playoff. You need those wins. We see it every year. You need Georgia beat Notre Dame, Alabama beat Florida State when Florida State was supposed to be really good. you got to have those high-end non-conference wins. Oklahoma beating Ohio State. It behooves the Pac-12 the prospect of getting a win over a 9 or 10 victory BYU team with the potential for a loss. I think that's a risk the Pac-12 would want to take. Plus, there's the second level is that if BYU is really good and winning 9 or 10 games, BYU's probably beaten some Power 5 teams that are on the schedule. So the Pac-12 would, collect on an indirect basis, would collect those victories on their resumes. That's what they need. They need BYU to win 10 games and go to Tennessee and beat Tennessee, and then have, whoever it is, Washington beat BYU. That's the best case scenario for the conference.
We are talking with Jon Wilner of the San Jose Mercury News, AP Top 25 college football voter. You answer my question. BYU needs to win 9 or 10 games to really have an impact on the Pac-12. They've got 4 Pac-12 teams on the schedule in 2018, at Arizona, home to Cal, at Washington, at Utah. How would you rank those 4 Pac-12 opponents from easiest to hardest?
From BYU's perspective?
Yeah.
Well, you almost have to put the Holy War in a separate category, right? I do think Utah is going to be good this year. I think Utah could be considered a sleeper pick to win the South, given the continuity, head coach, offensive coordinator, and quarterback, plus the veteran offensive line. I think Utah certainly is a threat to win the South. And so is Arizona, to be honest. Again, a lot of it has to do with the quarterback situation. But in terms of which of those games is going to be toughest, I would say it's the Huskies, right? Is that game in Seattle or Provo? I can't. I don't remember.
That game's in Seattle.
Yeah. Good luck with that. I think that they're going to be top 10. They're loaded. I've got Washington to win they're my pick to win the conference. So, Cal on the surface, Cal's probably going to be the most winnable game for the Cougars, but none of those will be anything close to easy. And I would think that, maybe BYU's favored in that Cal game. I'm not quite sure, but not in the other 3 for sure.
John, great stuff. We appreciate the insight. We look forward to any and other articles that you have featuring BYU, and wish you the best of luck handling the Twitter onslaught.
Yeah, no problem. BYU, to me, is fascinating just because of the nature of scheduling as an independent. So I'm sure I'll be writing more about it and the impact on the Pac-12.
All right, we'll keep our eyes open for that. Thanks, John.